All right, my phone says we're live, so let's get started. Today, we are going to officially wrap up the Genesis Bible study. Last time, did you at all touch on Genesis 49 and 50, the conclusion of Genesis, or was it mostly focused on Rachel's sons, Joseph and Benjamin? Okay, then that's what we're going to do today, or what we'll focus on for the first half of today. We'll look at Genesis 49 and Genesis 50. We'll explore why they matter, especially important to ask and answer this question because you never read Genesis 49 and 50 in Sunday school. You just skip over them. We have spent the last 4 weeks looking on just a couple of verses in Genesis 49. We are not going to rehash Jacob's blessings to his sons, or Joseph's son's adoption. Today, the focus is on everything else in those two chapters. And then, the second half of class, we're going to look at the ways that Genesis gives us a whole bunch of what I'm going to call unresolved tensions. It sets us up for the rest of Scripture. And it sets us up to look forward to Jesus, of course. And so hopefully you'll learn a few things as we look at those unresolved tensions that Genesis sets up for us. But we'll see them set up even just in these two chapters. So, Genesis 49, all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. So, each of the blessings that we've heard over these last 4 weeks has been the blessing suitable to the child. They're tailor-made. Then he commanded them. So he blesses them and he commands them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. Israel blesses his kids, and the thing he's concerned for, this thing he most asks, is take me home. And it's not just a sentimental, I want to be buried with my fathers. This is the promised land. This is the land of the promise that was given to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and I am going back there. I should be back there. So there they did. They buried Abraham and Sarah, there they buried Abraham and Sarah. This is still Jacob talking. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Then we start chapter 50. Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. This is an elaborate process, and a long one too. 40 days of embalming and 70 days of weeping. Jacob wasn't just a resident in Egypt. And it's not just his sons and his sons' family that are weeping for him. It is all of Egypt. This demonstrates how important Joseph and his family became to Egypt. Not just Joseph was important, but the entire family was important. They had served well. They were well loved. And so he's embalmed. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. In my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore, let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return. So Joseph requests permission to go back to Canaan and to come back to Egypt. This should sound familiar to you if you know the Exodus story. Now, this is long before the Exodus story, to be clear, but we are setting up a pattern that will come later. But the surprise here is Joseph's request is going to be granted. Pharaoh answered, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. No problems, no arguments, no plagues are necessary. Just go. So Joseph went up, and he did. He buried his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. There was no doubt that they were coming back. Their kids were still in Egypt, right? There was no doubt that they were coming back, but they all went, and not just Joseph, but all of Egypt too. A remarkable, remarkable thing. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Note who's forgotten here. The people of Israel. Or, not just forgotten, indistinguishable from. You've lived here long enough, you look like them, you smell like them, you act like them. Whatever the case, the place became known as Abel Mitzrayim. It is beyond the Jordan, Mitzrayim being the Hebrew word for Egypt. So it's a place of mourning for Egypt. It gets its name from the mourning of the Egyptians for a man who deserved to live in Canaan. Thus his sons, that's Jacob's sons, did for him as he had commanded them, for his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. Okay. So we've wrapped that section up with a neat little bow. Jacob died outside of Egypt, outside of Canaan, in the land of Egypt, and he wanted to be buried, should be buried at home in Canaan, and he was. Now we have to conclude our story of Genesis. Now that Jacob is gone, the generations of Jacob have been established. The life of Jacob has been established. So Genesis 50 says this. Can I get a reader, please?
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you.
Now, have we heard this command at this point in the story? No. No. This, for all we know, this is the brothers making something up. And to be fair, there are many times in the biblical story where we're not told things that happen. So it could be that the brothers are telling the truth as well. But knowing the history with these brothers, we might be inclined to read it one way or the other. But whatever the case, Joseph, your father commanded us to tell you, he didn't tell you this, I don't know why, But he commanded us to tell you, please forgive the transgression of their brothers and their sin. And here's the thing, if we've been following the story of Joseph so far, is this even necessary? No. No, because Joseph has named his son forgetting. He's named his own son in honor of the forgiveness that he's already given to his brother. Now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father, they say to Joseph. And what does Joseph do? Can I get a reader?
Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell before him and said, Behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, Do not fear, for I am in the place of God.
Am I?
Oh, yeah. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today.
Now, to be fair to my previous statement, we usually do get this part of the story in Sunday school. Joseph's forgiveness for his brothers, that what you meant for evil, God meant for good. But we skip over the brothers' seeming deception, or the tale they tell here, whether it's true or not. We skip over all the setup with taking Jacob back home. We focus on this, and what a beautiful thing to focus on, to be fair. It's a beautiful moment that Joseph says, look, I could judge you, and many other men might, but why am I not going to? I'm not God. That doesn't seem like a normal thought process in a human mind, does it? An eye for an eye, right? But Joseph asks this question, am I God? What does that have to do with it? What does God have to do with judgment? Everything. Yeah. Yeah. As the scriptures say many times, vengeance belongs to the Lord. Who is the judge of all creation? It's Jesus. Joseph is saying, look, I might have reason to be angry. I might have reason to take vengeance in my own head, but I don't have justification to do this thing. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. You meant evil against me, but God took that evil, he turned it around, and he used it for good. And even that alone, we can pause and spend a good amount of time on, right? There's all kinds of things in our life that seem terrible. Being sold in, I have a feeling not many in this room have been sold into slavery, right? There are many things in life that seem terrible, and yet Joseph is a beautiful demonstration that God can use anything for good. And not just for Joseph's good, but that many people should be kept alive as they are, even today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years, a good, long life. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. Where are they to take his bones? The same place they took his father, right? So Joseph died being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. The end of the story. That is the end of Genesis. Joseph is embalmed and put in a coffin just like one of the pharaohs. And he's not taken home. Which leads us to this idea of unresolved tensions. Will Joseph make it home? It's a real question. But the first unresolved tension I want to bring up is the first one that comes in the story, or arguably one of the first ones in the story. The serpent is told, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. We said in Genesis 3 that this is known as the proto-evangelium, the first gospel, the first promise of Scripture. There will come an offspring who strikes back against the serpent that wants to devour us. Why is this an unresolved tension?
Because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, because simply put, it hasn't happened yet. Eve's offspring, the one who follows this thing the serpent is told, did what?
Killed his brother.
Killed his own brother. Yep. He did not crush the serpent, he was devoured by it. Sin is crouching at your door, and right? The serpent got him. He had a chance to crush the head, to bruise the head of the serpent, but he was attacked instead and swallowed instead. Have any of Eve's offspring in Genesis actually fulfilled this promise? I mean, we've had some good ones. Seth and Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. They've seemed pretty good. But have they defeated the serpent? No. So we have our first unresolved tension. How is this going to be resolved? Who is going to finally defeat the dragon? I mean, the serpent. Number 2. Over and over, we've read, these are the generations of in Genesis. And the generations of have been kind of mysterious. First, we get the generations of the heavens and the earth. Then we get the generations of Adam, Seth, Noah, the sons of Noah. Then we pick out one son, Shem. Then we get the generations of Terah, not the generations of Abraham for some reason. Then we get Esau and Ishmael. We get Ishmael and Isaac, Esau and Jacob. Why didn't we get the generations of Joseph? Why didn't we get the generations of Judah, for that matter? If looking forward in the story, we know that Judah will be the one through whom Jesus comes. Judah's line, at least. This is a real and challenging question for us. The generations of have been a consistent theme. Where will we get the next in this story? I believe it's the generations of Moses and then the generations of Perez, but it doesn't come in Genesis. And who is Perez, by the way? Judah's son. So we do kind of get the generations of Judah in much the same kind of way as we oddly skip Abraham. We skip Judah to pick his son. But yeah, what a mystery this line is that keeps coming up and what it means. Why don't we get this? Well, because the story is far from over. How about all nations? One of the things that Abraham is told is, I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Now, arguably, here in Egypt, Jacob's family might count as a great nation. It might. His name is certainly great if he was mourned for all of that time, right? Mourning and mourning and mourning, embalming for 40 days. But then God says to Abraham, I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. We demonstrated that this happened again and again in in the book of Genesis. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Has that happened? Have all the families of the earth been blessed in Abraham yet? No. No, I mean, Canaan and Egypt were blessed by the food that was stored up. But we know for a fact that there are an awful lot more families of the earth to be reckoned with, so to speak. So we have another unresolved promise, an unresolved tension here in Genesis that has yet to be fulfilled and certainly isn't fulfilled anytime soon in the Old Testament. About the land. We already hit on this one a little bit, right? The land is an unresolved tension because Abraham has promised, I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan. It's all yours. All of Canaan is yours for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. An everlasting possession, and yet where are they? Egypt. And when they go back to bury Jacob in Egypt, where do they take him? To Canaan. But how much of Canaan is theirs? It's a very small plot. Yeah. This promise has not been fulfilled yet. Not only are they not in Canaan, but they only rightfully own a small portion of the land that is theirs for an everlasting possession. We have got a long way to go on this one. And even if we want to count Shechem, the land that Levi and Simeon took by force, even if we want to count that as part of the property of this family, we've got a lot more of Canaan left to take or to receive. Okay, next. And this one takes a little bit more of a close reading of Genesis to explore. But Joseph had an interesting pattern that we saw as we read through the Joseph story. Over and over in his life, he follows it. He does it 3 times that he follows this pattern. He has a rough beginning, strife with his brothers, in a new place. But the Lord is with Joseph, and his master sees it. So the new place is Potiphar's house. The Lord is with Joseph. His master puts him over the house. The master sees that the Lord is with Joseph. Joseph is made second in command in Potiphar's house. And then, in spite of faithful service, what happens to Joseph? He suffers. How?
Potiphar's wife lies, and Joseph gets thrown into prison.
Yeah, he's falsely accused of seducing Potiphar's wife, and Joseph is thrown in prison. And in prison, what a rough beginning. In a new place, the prison. But the Lord is with Joseph, and the master of the prison sees that, and he puts Joseph over all of the prisoners in the prison. He's made second in command, so to speak, in the prison. But in spite of faithful service, he interprets the dreams of these 2 men, and he asks them to remember him. In spite of this faithful service, Joseph suffers. What a rough beginning. But Joseph comes out of prison and is in a new place when he's brought out of prison. And Pharaoh, this time, sees that the Lord is with Joseph as Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh recognizes that the Lord is with Joseph and makes Joseph second in command over all of Egypt. Has Joseph suffered in spite of faithful service in the story of Genesis? Here in Egypt? Under Pharaoh? How has Joseph suffered under Pharaoh?
He is in Egypt. He is away from his family. He is not in the promised land. He is in the place of idolatry. He's separated from where he is and what he is supposed to be.
Okay, I can see that perspective. My argument would be that he has not yet suffered unjustly in the same ways that he did in the past, right? He might not be where he's supposed to be, but he hasn't been treated unfairly. He hasn't been accused of something falsely. He hasn't had someone fail to do what they said they were going to do for him. So we've got this pattern established that in spite of faithful service, Joseph should suffer here in Egypt. And at least in the text of Genesis, now that he's second in command to Pharaoh, he has not yet suffered. Now, within a couple lines of the book of Exodus, we see this exact thing is going to happen, right? Joseph will be faithful. Joseph's family will be faithful. Everything will go right, but there's a new king in Egypt who doesn't know Joseph. And Joseph, through his children, will suffer in spite of that faithful service. So even this pattern is setting us up for the story is not yet over. We've got more story to tell here. Another pattern that you might highlight in Genesis is the exile pattern. And it's not necessarily easy to notice at first, but there's exile again and again and again and again. You leave the place you're supposed to be over and over. And it's right there at the beginning when Adam and Eve have to leave Eden. When Adam and Eve have to leave Eden, they are arguably exiled out of the garden. What's the next exile?
Cain.
Who?
Cain.
Cain. Yeah, great. Cain is driven from the ground, it says. He's no longer allowed to work the ground that he was living on. This is a form of exile. He's a wanderer on the earth and has no home. What's the next exile? Abraham?
Say Noah.
Noah. Yeah, the flood drove Noah and his family from the land. But the interesting thing is Noah gets to return.
Well, Noah was not driven out because of his sin. Noah was saved because of his faithfulness. Usually exile is because of sin.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting change? That God's mercy is different in this case, or maybe God's mercy is more obvious in this case because of the fact that Noah is counted as righteous.
So maybe Noah isn't the one that was exiled, it's everybody else.
Could make the argument.
But Noah still is driven from the ground. Like Noah leaves his proper place and comes back. So I think even if we want to say everybody else was exiled, I think at least in this context, Noah is pretty clearly going and coming back and fits the pattern. Or maybe I should say starts a new one. What's the next one?
Abraham?
By my count, yes, Abraham. How was Abraham exiled? What was Abraham driven away from?
In Egypt. Right? He's Canaan.
He leaves Canaan for Egypt. After Abraham is told to leave his homeland, he goes to Canaan, and he leaves Canaan for Egypt. He's forced out by circumstance. But Abraham returns. We're following the Noah pattern here, not necessarily the Cain pattern. Interestingly, you could argue here that I've forgotten one in that Ishmael and Esau both kind of are forced to leave.
You got Babel in there?
Yeah, Babel would be a good option as well, but then we'd have to put it here, right? So here, let's re-envision what we've been given here. So Adam and Eve Cain, Noah, Babel, Abraham. After Abraham, I said, I forgot one. Now, honestly, I could not think up a way to argue that Isaac was exiled. But Ishmael certainly leaves. His mom first, and Ishmael ends up leaving with him. And then we have the story of Esau, arguably not exiled at the time. He kind of leaves of his own accord, but maybe we'll put Esau there. But then Jacob flees Canaan. Fearing for his life, he flees Canaan for Haran. But ultimately, we know from what we read today that Jacob will return. He not only returns the one time when he comes back with his new wife, but then he returns a second time when he comes back from Egypt. But then we have this question of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph and his brothers are brought to Egypt. Will they return? Where are they going to fit? Are they going to be on this new side?
Their offspring return.
Joseph returns.
Not in Genesis.
Right.
Yeah, Genesis leaves us with an unresolved tension. Will Joseph, will his brothers return? And if so, how? And Joseph sets it up such that he can, right? He's embalmed, he's put in the coffin. We don't get this for any of the other brothers, not even Judah. Not for Perez. Now, we know that Joseph ultimately will. But it's a really interesting pattern, and it's a good point to be made, that you have the pattern of sin and rejecting God, and you have the pattern of righteousness, which is faithfulness toward God. And the difference between returning and not returning is about that faithfulness. That faithfulness is the difference in all of these stories. It's not necessarily that these men over here are perfect and these men are not. But these men are faithful, right? And yes, Jacob did return. All right. One, maybe two more unresolved tensions I don't remember. Kingship. And this one is very subtle in the text of Genesis, but it's there. If you remember our discussion of Judah, what's Judah's blessing? Part of that blessing, and it's an extensive one, but part of that blessing says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples." Why is this an unresolved tension?
He never gets the scepter, let alone have somebody take away from him.
Yeah, Judah has no sign of control or power or authority. Who does?
The little baby brother.
Joseph. Wow, that seems like a very unresolved story, right? And one of the amazing things is this story is not resolved anytime soon in this book. Even if you count Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, this story is not resolved anytime soon. Even in the context of the full Torah, we have tensions that are being set up that have yet to be concluded. And this is one of those that, as we said in our study of Judah's blessing, doesn't really get resolved until King David. And then we see it again perfectly resolved in Jesus. Now, any thoughts or questions or comments on all of that? I like this idea just because it helps you see what Genesis is doing in a lot of cases. What Genesis is setting up for the future, even as we focus on some main themes of the story, exile and return. God's faithfulness and human unfaithfulness, and the ways that God uses evil to make good. So again and again, Genesis is setting this up, and it's pointing us toward these themes of salvation, of the land and the blessing and the nation. Questions or comments?
Talking on this or in general?
In general. This is the last session of Genesis, so.
So I think we see a hint with Judah in Exodus with Nachshon, the first one that goes into the sea. He's from Judah. And he clearly takes a lead on that. But then I was thinking back to your pattern of Joseph, of the exile, suffering. And clearly we see Jesus' life in this. Very, very clearly. I mean, just verbatim. But then I think we also can look at the end of Joseph's pattern where he is rectified with the brothers, where he is exiled, he lives a whole existence without them. They have no idea who he is. They think he hates them. Once they discover who he is, they are terrified. He takes them back in love. And I see a lot of messianic significance.
Well, arguably what you just described is fulfilled very well in the disciples by themselves, right? So the disciples encounter Jesus after his resurrection, and they assume he hates them and he's going to judge them. And what does he do instead? He restores them. And in some cases, we see him restore them one by one. Peter, most notably. Feed my sheep, right?
And I would even take it further than that. I think there's significance for the return. of that
Right. Yeah, and that's a complicated question, but Paul, I think, would mostly agree with you on that measure.
Well, it also goes to what you said before about Joseph not being where he was supposed to be. Jesus wasn't where he was supposed to be either. He knew that was where he needed to be. That's why Joseph went back. He could have stayed in Canaan to, no, you guys don't have to come with us. We'll be fine. We'll be right back, and then just not come back. He knew that was where he needed to be and where where God wanted him to be. It's like Jesus knew that this was where God wanted him to be, and this is what needed to be done.
Yeah, and it's funny because you might even be able to make this argument for the pattern multiple times in Jesus' life. Jesus certainly comes back as a young boy to Jerusalem briefly, and he's recognized for his unique wisdom. Now, maybe not the suffering for faithful service at that time. Though his parents do chastise him for being in the temple at that. Maybe that counts. But yeah, Joseph's Joseph's pattern matching up to Jesus' pattern is no accident. Arguably, Jesus' mere existence on this earth is the rough beginning in a new place, yet the Lord is with Joseph, right? Is with Jesus.
Does Moses follow that pattern
Um,
in a similar way?
I think you could make that argument.
Only
Uh,
after the
I mean, Moses is the redeemer of the people, Joseph is the redeemer of the people,
And
Jesus is the redeemer.
David follows this pattern pretty well, right? Like,
Because Moses, the rough beginning, new place, Lord is with him.
you certainly could make this argument for the Apostle Paul. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to wrestle with. But, I mean, you could say Peter. To be fair, it's a pretty simple pattern, right? But I do think it's instructive for us as we think about our own Christian walk. It's not going to be a cakewalk every time. We won't always be where we think we should be at the beginning or at the end, for that matter. But we know that the Lord is with us. So even if we suffer in spite of faithful service, and in fact, maybe as Peter would probably say, whenever we suffer in spite of faithful service, because it's going to happen, we shouldn't be surprised. We should just keep going.
We could even remove that caveat of in spite of faithful service. We suffer because of life, and even when we're doing good, we suffer when we do wrong. And even that is instructive, even that is for our benefit.
Yeah, I like the in spite of faithful service he suffers, though, because if we're looking at patterns for our own life, and I'm not disagreeing that we do suffer for our benefit, suffer and get disciplined for our benefit when we do wrong. A lot of the time, when we as Christians suffer, we think, God is trying to change my course. Like, God is punishing me, like, I should stop doing the thing that I'm doing because I'm suffering for it. But sometimes what you're doing is faithful and you're suffering for it, and it shouldn't be a surprise, because what Joseph went through, what Jesus went through, what Paul went through again and again, they did what they should have done in that scenario, and they suffered. We're told to follow them. We're told to follow their example. When we do what we should do, what's going to happen to us? From time to time, we'll suffer. Not always. But just saying that really clearly is so important. Because otherwise, man, suffering can make you feel hopeless. Suffering can make the things we do as Christians feel meaningless and unappreciated. Yeah. Well, we're gonna end early today. Enjoy an extra 10 minutes or so of fellowship time out in the lobby and in the fellowship hall. Let's close with a quick word of prayer. Heavenly Father, as we think on the way that you worked this world that we live in, the ways that you shaped creation from the very beginning, and the ways that you continued to shape it through Adam and Eve, through Seth and through Noah and through Abraham, through Isaac and through Jacob and Joseph and so many others. We continue to learn the realities of life in this world, the realities of faithfulness to you, and the great challenges that might encounter us. But at the same time, these stories remind us of your faithfulness. They remind us of your greater plan, such that when we suffer for what we have done, especially for when we suffer for the faithfulness that we live out, we need not fear or lose hope, but instead, all the more, strive to keep on following you. Keep being faithful to you and trusting that you will work good through the evils that happen in our lives. Lord, bless us to not just stop in the book of Genesis, but to explore Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, Samuel and Kings and Joshua and Judges, and on we can read and read and read, and we will never exhaust the blessings that you have for us in these books that you have given. All of these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.